What happens when America's sweetest comedian meets one of television's most provocative hosts, and a seemingly innocent question about family values explodes into the most unforgettable late-night moment of the year? Tonight, we're diving into the confrontation that had Leanne Morgan storming off set, Andy Cohen scrambling for control, and the entertainment world buzzing about what really went down. The night began innocently enough. Leanne Morgan, Tennessee's small-town mom turned comedy star, was on Andy Cohen's show to promote her latest special. Known for her warm stories about motherhood, marriage, and small-town life, she was an unlikely candidate for controversy. Andy, on the other hand, had built his reputation on charm laced with provocation. His interviews often mixed light-hearted banter with just enough edge to spark viral moments. At first, it was smooth sailing. Andy greeted Leanne with his signature charisma, congratulated her on her recent success, and asked about her journey from performing in small venues to becoming a national sensation. Leanne responded with her usual warmth, sprinkling in funny anecdotes about balancing her tour schedule with family life. The audience laughed easily, expecting nothing more than a pleasant exchange. But then Andy leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting in that way long-time viewers recognized. He was about to push. "Your comedy really centers on traditional family, values, and small-town life," he said. "Do you ever worry that might feel outdated to younger audiences living very different realities?" Leanne's smile wavered. Still composed, she answered, "I don't think love, family, and community ever go out of style. My stories may come from a small-town perspective, but the emotions behind them are universal. Whether you're raising kids in Tennessee or New York, you're facing the same challenges of holding your family together and finding joy in the little things." Andy nodded, but pressed further. "But don't you think, as your platform grows, there's a responsibility to acknowledge not everyone fits into that traditional structure? Some might say your comedy unintentionally excludes people living different kinds of lives." The air shifted. Leanne straightened in her seat, the folksy softness giving way to something firmer. "Andy, I'm not excluding anyone. I tell stories about my life. That's what comedians do. I'm not making political statements or judging other people's choices. I'm just sharing what makes me laugh in my world." But Andy wasn't letting go. "Yet when you consistently highlight traditional families as your source of humor and joy, doesn't that imply they're the right way? Especially since you've made comments about traditional values being under attack." Leanne's eyes sharpened. "I never said values are under attack. I said they matter to me. There's a difference between honoring your own values and tearing down someone else's." The audience had gone quiet. Andy sensed tension, but chose to lean in instead of pulling back. "But Leanne, let's be honest. You've built your brand around being the wholesome mom from Tennessee. You talk about traditional marriage, traditional roles, traditional everything. At some point, doesn't traditional start to sound exclusive?" That's when Leanne's tone shifted completely. Gone was the sweet southern warmth. "Andy, stop right there. You're twisting what I've said into something it isn't. I won't sit here and let you paint me as judgmental when you clearly haven't been listening." Andy blinked, surprised. He tried to regain control. "I'm asking legitimate questions about your messaging." "My messaging?" she shot back. "I don't have messaging. I have stories, experiences, a life I share with people who connect with it. I'm not running for office. I'm telling jokes about my kids leaving socks on the floor and my husband forgetting trash day." The studio was frozen. Even the crew seemed uncertain whether to intervene. Andy pressed. "But those stories come with context. When you joke about traditional families, whether you mean to or not, you're making a statement. And some people feel excluded." Leanne gave a humorless laugh. "Do you know what excludes people? Telling them their lives don't matter because they don't fit your version of acceptable. Or twisting someone's joy into an accusation. That's exclusion." Andy tried to defend himself, but Leanne cut him off sharper now. So you're saying that because I celebrate my marriage, I'm responsible for making other people feel bad about theirs? That's not logic, Andy. That's picking a fight. Andy, flustered, tried to explain. It's not about explicit statements. It's about the narrative you create. The narrative I create? Leanne leaned forward, incredulous. Let me tell you about my narrative. For years, I performed in tiny venues, telling stories about feeling like a failure as a mom, about struggling in my marriage, about never living up to expectations. I made people laugh with my insecurities, my flaws. Never once did I claim to be perfect or say anyone should live like me. And now you're telling me my honesty is harmful? Andy attempted a softer angle. But surely you see that celebrating certain lifestyles can feel like endorsing them over others. Leanne's expression shifted, almost pitying. So what you're really saying is, I shouldn't love my life out loud because it might upset someone else. Do you realize how backwards that is? Andy faltered. I'm saying there's a way to do it that doesn't marginalize people. Marginalize? Leanne's voice cracked with disbelief. I tell stories about burning dinner and missing school events. How does that marginalize anyone? How does being honest about my chaos tear others down? The tension peaked. Andy tried to reset. In today's climate, we all need to be mindful of how our words affect communities. Communities? Leanne shook her head. My communities are truck drivers, teachers, nurses, mechanics, moms and dads trying to hold it together. They come to my shows because they see their lives in mine. And you're telling me those communities don't count? Her voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Andy, you've spent 15 minutes tearing down everything I stand for under the guise of innocent questions. You questioned my integrity, my right to tell my own stories, and my ability to celebrate my life without apology. She suddenly stood, unhooking her microphone. Crew members tensed. You know what your real problem is? You live in a bubble. You think your worldview is universal. But outside that bubble, people are craving honesty. They're craving permission to love their lives without apology. Andy urged her to sit. She laughed coldly. Rational? You brought me here to talk comedy, then put me on trial for being happy. That's not rational. Andy insisted he was, raising cultural questions. No, Leanne snapped. You were fishing for a headline. You wanted content, not conversation. The studio sat in stunned silence. Leanne's voice grew steadier, stronger. I came here excited to share my work. Instead, you made me defend my right to be proud of my choices. That's not an important conversation. That's an ambush. She laid the mic on Andy's desk. Apparently, in your world, being happy with traditional choices is dangerous. Apparently, celebrating your own life is only allowed if you apologize for it first. Andy finally stood, but Leanne was already in control. You claim to represent society, but you represent your audience, your bubble. Don't pretend it's universal. Real society? It's people trying to raise families, pay bills, love their lives. They deserve to feel seen, too. Her voice rose. We need more people who celebrate their choices without tearing others down. We need fewer people policing other people's happiness. And we need honesty. Not the fear that sharing your truth will get you branded a villain. She turned to Andy, eyes locked on his. You don't want a conversation. You want a confession. You want me to admit my joy is harmful. But I won't. I refuse to apologize for laughing at the messiness of life, for celebrating my marriage, for being proud of motherhood, for being happy. That's not exclusion. That's authenticity. Then, she looked straight into the camera. If my comedy helps people feel seen, if it reminds couples why they love each other, if it tells moms it's okay to struggle and laugh through it, then I will never apologize for that. Her voice cracked with emotion. You talk inclusion and tolerance, but your version doesn't include people like me, and that says more about you than it does about me. With that, Leanne turned and walked out, leaving Andy Cohen speechless, the audience stunned, and cameras still rolling on. What instantly became one of late night's most explosive moments. When the show cut to commercial, everyone knew they'd witnessed history. What was meant to be a lighthearted promo had revealed something deeper, a cultural divide over family values, authenticity, and the right to celebrate your life without apology. So was Leanne right to defend herself so fiercely? Or was Andy raising legitimate questions she refused to face? That debate is still raging, and one thing is certain: this late-night clash will be talked about for years to come.